Welcome to Tita Talks. I'm Sonia Tita Puopolo, and I'm your host. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Chris Berlin from Harvard University. Chris is the denominational counselor to Buddhist studies and instructor in ministry and pastoral counseling at the Harvard Divinity School. Chris is also a beloved Harvard University Extension School professor of religion, an instructor who teaches courses on compassion, mindfulness, and resilience to outstanding student reviews each semester. Thank you for joining me today on Tita Talks, Chris. I'm so excited to discuss the compelling topic of, can AI be mindful? This discussion is especially timely to me as it aims to bridge the gap between technology, mindfulness, and meditation practices. With the launch of our AI-powered Self-Care Squared app, this conversation is even more enlightening. Our Self-Care Squared app offers preventative practices within our 4 pillars of a healthy lifestyle. That's exercise, nutrition, rest, healing, and mindfulness meditation. And it's more than just a tool. It's a pathway toward embracing mindfulness and self-care to enhance and nurture one's well-being. It's your way to wellness. In this episode, we aim to explore intriguing questions such as, what does it mean for AI to be mindful? Are there applications where mindfulness techniques can improve AI interactions? We also will define the difference between mindfulness and meditation. How can individuals use mindfulness to navigate the complexities of an increasingly tech-driven world? And how can individuals practice mindfulness and meditation to improve their rest and healing and restore themselves? This spring, Chris is teaching a new course, Mindfulness, AI, and Ethics, Cultivating the Heart of the Algorithm, at the Harvard Extension School. And I would like to share one particular student review that Dean Suzanne Spreadbury revealed during a recent discussion she had with Chris about the intersections of artificial intelligence and religion. She shared, Chris Berlin is truly exemplary, embodying wisdom and passion and profound knowledge. He is one of my favorite professors of all time. He created a deeply supportive and inspiring learning environments. His insightful lectures, thoughtful choice of course materials, and compassionate engagement with students provided a foundation for profound intellectual and personal growth. Welcome to Tita Talks, Chris.
Thank you. So lovely to be here. And thank you for inviting me for this amazing conversation.
We're so excited to have you here today. Chris, mindfulness and gratitude. How do you believe cultivating gratitude enhances daily self-care? And in what ways does recognizing and being mindful about gratitude support mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being in our fast-paced world? And what are you grateful for today?
Wow, great question. Great question, and great to start with gratitude. I think the first thing I would say is, what am I most grateful for? And I am profoundly grateful for all of my students. I am grateful for just the seeking, the interest, the openness that they bring, not just to my classes at Harvard, but also meditation students. I'm grateful that they're wanting to learn, not just for their own well-being, but also how to actually curate a world that is itself more mindful, more loving, more compassionate. So that is, I have just immeasurable gratitude for them and their aspirations, and it's why I do what I do. Without my students, I would probably be off playing my guitar in a mountain somewhere and waiting for it all just to unfold in whatever way it goes. So thank you to all of my students, and also to this wonderful testimonial that this student offered. Truly, I'm humbled and touched by it. So, yeah. And I think, to answer the question of just a more general question around gratitude, that's something that when I was younger never came easily to me. I was always ahead. What do I want to do next? What do I not have? Right? Almost a scarcity mentality. And so I had to really focus on not just on what I'm grateful for. Like for a while, I tried to do 20 things I'm grateful for every night before going to sleep. And I'd usually fall asleep before I'd ever get to 20. It was a great insomnia tool to combat insomnia. But I don't know that it was really all that helpful for me personally until I learned a couple of very probably more impactful ways of being grateful. Things that are really accessible to me. A friend of mine designed a five points of gratitude that I then incorporated into a meditation practice that I call the 5 fields of gratitude. Being grateful to be alive in this body, so my body is well, it is healthy, and even if it isn't, it is still giving me strength and energy. The impulse to be alive is profound. Grateful for this mind that loves to learn, that is always seeking and always learning new things. This mind that is conscious and aware, and at the heart of which is also wakeful. Grateful for this heart that engages in love and relationships and cares about myself, others, and all beings, as well as the state of the world. That caring is really worth being grateful for. Let's see, what else? Oh, grateful for the entire creative process in the cosmos. And so, sort of bringing it out into a much larger kind of thing there, that I'm part of this thing called life. Those qualities. Oh, and the gratitude to be present, to be able to be present in this moment. And I found those really impactful because they weren't just like things, quote unquote, that I'm grateful for, but I was able to use that as a mindfulness practice, as recognition, really being able to recognize in this moment all of those, what I would call blessings. The other thing is that in the Tibetan tradition, so I'm also a lay teacher in Tibetan Buddhism and meditation teacher and all that. And in the Tibetan tradition, there are 2 forms of gratitude we can look at as appreciation. The first is called Kaden Drenpa in the Tibetan, and that is basically recognizing those in our lives who have taught us and guided us to be wise, loving beings. Yeah, these are basically people, benefactors that have shared their gifts with us to be appreciative of what we've received from them. And so I've also found that important, like my teachers, my parents, my father, who was an amazing individual. And then the second form, so that's Kaden Drenpa, and Chok Shepa is the second one. And that is basically a recognition, an appreciation that what I have in this present moment is enough. What I have is sufficient in this moment for well-being. And as opposed to aspiring to have more down the road or whatever, but it brought me as a mindfulness practice back into the present and opened me to, wow, I'm really blessed to be here now and well, and have the capacity to be cultivating mindfulness, to be fed, to, all of that. So it's that recognition, that appreciation that what I have is sufficient for this moment. And let's say we practice that 24/7. We start to see just how much we have to be grateful for. And in those moments where we're really challenged, we can bring all of that sense, that momentum of gratitude to help make us more resilient in those moments where we really need strength. So that has just transformed my life. And so I am Whereas I wasn't when I was younger, I am now a profoundly grateful human being, especially as I get older. So,
I
yeah,
love that. I wonder if someone like the more like they could actually start like you could do so many different mindfulness meditations or meditations around the gratitude practice. Like you could extend it. You could do like an entire year, let alone whether a daily. You could do a year of different and go deeper and deeper and deeper.
that's
You know,
true.
and
Yeah,
as I'm listening to you talk about how, and as I ask the question, because gratitude, how do you support your mental, emotional, spiritual being? Maybe one might be able to do that practice and like each one of those as a chapter or something, or as a series, right? And spread
that's
that out.
true.
Thinking of that.
As a mindfulness practice, as a
Yeah.
longer term mindfulness practice, I think too, relative to gratitude, is that for me, recognition was a really important thing to recognize, despite how I feel, whatever emotions I may have, that there are
Yes.
points I can recognize um,
Mm.
and appreciate certain qualities, as like the ones I just mentioned. And
Yeah.
it needs to be authentic. Like I really need to see this is important, and without this, I would suffer more.
Right.
And the other thing is to be realistic about my expectations to be grateful. Because, trying to think of 20 things every night before falling asleep was a little bit, I think the goal was a little too unreachable without repeating the same things every night, which would have been fine. But,
Right.
it seemed like a lot to have to do every night. And I would just start checking out, which is, I think, why I fell asleep. So our goals need to be realistic and
Absolutely.
only present moment. And that's the mindfulness part, is right here and now. There's a lot to be grateful for. But if I'm not in the present, I'm going to be spinning off into the future or carrying some stuff from the past that I'm having to navigate or react to. So really being present is such a key, to
Yeah.
gratitude, I think.
And so your course inspiration, can
Yes.
AI be mindful? What inspired you to create Mindfulness, AI and Ethics, Cultivating the Heart of the Algorithm? I love the name of your course. How do you envision mindfulness intersecting with emerging AI technologies?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Well, so how the course came into being was a culmination of the courses that have come before that I still teach. And I have to shout out to my amazing TA at the Extension School, Tajay Bangsa, who is just very beloved by our students and by me as well. I appreciate him very much. And the course really emerged from conversations I was having with him,
Right.
having taught started with mindfulness, meaning, and resilience. The course I've been teaching now for 11 years at the Extension School. Then adding the next phase of that being compassion science and the contemplative arts. So from mindfulness and resilience theory into compassion and how compassion is seen in Tibetan Buddhism. How do we cultivate compassion through contemplative arts? And what is the science around it as well, which is really quite striking when you start looking at the implications of the research. And then the third course that we developed was on enlightenment. It's called Enlightenment: Horizons of Human Potential and Flourishing, where we look at just the traditions, mostly South Asian spiritual traditions about enlightenment, as well as humanistic psychology and Maslow,
Yeah.
consciousness. We also go into psychedelics and all of that. It's it's kind of, so what we have here is a picture of kind of A to Z, and yet Z was not the end, because we were reflecting on all of these concepts in a technological world that is exponentially and ever more increasing in speed, how we are living our lives and where we're headed. So there's a really practical consideration to all of these wonderful contemplative traditions, whether it's mindfulness, compassion, through a contemplative lens, and enlightenment itself and consciousness led to, well, what about this? How do we want to live in the future collectively? And, given that Tajay, my TA, knows quite a bit about AI already, he worked at MIT last summer, I believe, and we started having conversations about, a little bit more applied practical concerns around consciousness and technology. So it kind of emerged from that. And, how we design our algorithms now, how engineers are approaching what comes next really matters. And the ethics and the teachings from not just mindfulness, but the ecosystem out of which mindfulness emerges is ever more critical on a much larger scale. So that's why we put together those terms, mindfulness, AI, and ethics, and how we cultivate the quote unquote heart of the algorithm comes with certain principles that you find in Buddhism that are underpinning this question of mindfulness, and how then do we want to really live? What kind of future do we want? And how do we curate that given the speed with which technology is exponentially increasing into not just AI, but AGI, and now what we're calling super intelligence, which is still theoretical, but it's quickly moving in that direction towards what we call a singularity. So anyway, all of these questions were really important, and thanks to Suzanne Spreadbury at the Extension School for just getting right on it and going, yep, we're going to do this class. So
awesome. And AI and well-being, given the rapid advancements in AI, how can these technologies enhance personal wellness and self-care?
Yeah, I think that they're really a very useful tool, actually. So a caveat here for me is, like, I don't have, there are a lot of people I talk to who say, I hate AI and the whole notion of it, or I really love it. I'm not on either side of the judgment of good, bad polarity, because it's a reality, and it is going there anyway. So for me, it's a tool that can be really remarkable in how it aggregates large sets of data very quickly, puts them together, and then responds to our questions or inquiries on these platforms. So I think in terms of what it can do around mindfulness, certainly it can educate people, especially people who are in remote parts of the country that don't have access to, let's say, a mindfulness teacher. Maybe there isn't even a yoga studio in somebody's town. Usually there are everywhere, but there are places where people may not want to go out and try a yoga class because, for whatever reason, there are a lot of people who are living in isolation as well, whether it's self-imposed or, they have health issues, what have you. So I think reach and access, absolutely. I think at some point we'll be able to ask artificial general intelligence specific questions about our practice. And we may be getting actually some pretty good responses, some pretty skillful responses in the absence of having a real teacher. And in fact, there are already programs that are doing this. There's something called Zen AI. There is, what is this other one called? A Buddha bot is another. So there are already these platforms that are harnessing kind of mindfulness principles and even Buddhist principles to have resources available for people. A lot of people have been impacted by Headspace or IQ Timer, some of the mindfulness apps. So this is kind of, I think, could be like a mindfulness app, only writ large, with a lot more depth and more interactive.
Right.
And also things like being able to explore For example, what might be a mindful response to this particular situation, and have AI basically give you some thoughts and ideas in the absence of other influences that you might have. So I think that it's intriguing to look at
Yes.
this, but I'm also cautious not to say this is a good replacement for a teacher who has a lot of experience, insights, and really experience is really a very, very key thing. It's more than just information, but
Right.
it's imbued with awareness, and
Right.
that's not something that I believe AI has.
In consciousness, right? Like that awareness of consciousness, or
Right.
like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It simulates awareness. It
Like
can simulate
humanity.
consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Imbued with humanity as well, would you say?
Right. It can simulate humanity. And I think that's the distinction here.
Yeah.
AI simulates many of these things
Yes.
and is even responsive, and it will learn
Yes.
based on what we put into it.
Completely.
And in that sense, it can appear to be conscious.
Yes.
And yet, one of the things that's compelling for me is if you take the coding and the data
Yes.
and you take the algorithms away, you're not
Yeah.
going to get any kind of response at all. But when you meditate as a human being and you settle the mind without the programming, without the coding, without the thoughts, the concepts, you're still able to be fully aware. And that awareness is a source of immeasurable clarity, creativity, potential. So that's why I say, AI, it needs data to function. Mindfulness or meditation or kind of the ultimate potential of what we can cultivate through meditation practices, in fact, is a relinquishing of data so that we can abide in an open, clear mind that is free from any of the shackles that come with our programming.
Right.
That's a
Right.
very important distinction. When people ask, can AI be mindful? It can simulate mindfulness
Right.
based on what's been programmed into it. It may even at some point, as AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is like next level,
Yes.
might be able to respond and aggregate data from other sources as a way to have conversation. No problem with that.
Right.
And yet, it hasn't had the experience of wisdom or insight without what's been programmed into it. And a meditator says that experience, that insight, that clarity comes from relinquishing all the programming that has gone into conditioning who I am as a person. And that there are now levels of consciousness that we don't even understand. I mean, we don't even know where consciousness comes from within ourselves, much less how to build it into a machine. So if we don't know who we are as conscious beings, we're not going to know whether or not something is truly conscious that we've built.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating? I just think it's fascinating. Integrating mindfulness in teaching. What challenges do you face when integrating mindfulness and compassion into discussions about AI? And how do you encourage mindful engagement with technology among your students?
Can you repeat? Can you
Okay.
repeat the
Yes,
question?
of course. It was sort of, okay, integrating mindfulness and teaching. What
Uh,
challenges do you face when integrating mindfulness and compassion into discussions about AI? And how do you encourage mindful engagement with technology among your students? So in
okay.
other words, like maybe those students who say, well, I don't really want to have any part with AI or technology, but the reality is it's here. So how can we be mindful and show that compassion and understanding, and how in a way where it can perhaps even, I'm going to add to my question maybe, and
It's
say,
fine.
how can we inspire through that, having compassion and in mindfulness? For
Yeah.
others, how can we inspire them to maybe expand their thoughts on and be more open to AI and technology, and understand that it's here?
Have to be really mindful that there are people in this class that are experts at AI, people who've worked in the field, entrepreneurs. They know all the technical language quite well. Some of them have worked in the sciences and so on. And then there are people who are just learning this. They have no background. They may not even like AI. They may even say outwardly, I really don't like it, right? And then you have everybody in between. And so I think the challenge there, I think, is to curate an experience that's valuable for everyone in the class. I don't know that it's terribly satisfying for people who are looking at how can we do better coding and what is kind of the science around, the engineering science of developing software and large language models that are more sophisticated, more integrated, more responsive, and all of that at a granular level. So like, I don't know those things. Like, I'm not an expert at that. And so what I say is, look, we're looking at the larger questions,
Yes.
The implications of what we're doing, the ethics, which on its own is a challenge. And people have different views of what ethics they feel might be helpful. People are also coming in and learning about basically the roots of mindfulness in Buddhism, and may have issues with, let's say, a concept of like interdependence. Yeah. And because of their background or what they've experienced, this may not be something that they resonate with terribly easily. And so, it's kind of working with these differences in the backgrounds of some of the people that are in the class. But I actually find that stimulating. It's not really a challenge. I think it's more an opportunity to really have genuine dialogue about what people care about. So I don't know that I actually am experiencing really any real difficulties or challenges, because we're all learning together, and I don't pretend to be an expert, right? I know about mindfulness, consciousness studies, AI. I use AI, and yet, I'm not an engineer, and I can't speak to all of the technical things, but I get the umbrella, the themes, the histories, what's at stake and where it's headed. So I think being a learner is important for me, and also for my TA. And what we bring to the table, I think, are important questions, ways of working through things that haven't been answered yet in the industry. Yeah, ethical questions that aren't being addressed. Universal norms versus applied ethics. So like in applied ethics, what we're talking about is that every field will have its own set of ethics around AI development. So if that's true, then what is a more universal understanding we can all agree to, that matters for the future of our well-being and our flourishing as humans, as opposed to what AI thinks down the road is better for itself rather than for us, which would be what we call an alignment problem. We're not aligned anymore. AI is no longer aligned in its goals with human flourishing. It takes off, and that's the big concern in the field. It starts making up its own decisions and all of that. So we're looking at these questions as a class. We're in territory that's very adaptive. In other words, there's no technical solution for this. We're in foreign waters here. Yes. So we're having to really be conscious about how we proceed into the future. So I think, that's my response then, if there are inconsistencies around some of the granular technologies. And I rely on some of our students for some of that clarification as well. We can learn from all of these folks.
And for those who, well, I'll just ask you, how do you define mindfulness and meditation? Because it's two different, I know you have mindfulness, you have meditation, and then you have mindfulness meditation.
Exactly.
For those who really think that, oh, mindfulness is meditation or meditation is mindfulness, how would you best define so they can really?
Yeah. It can be, so I look at it this way. Mindfulness, it depends on the context, how we use that term. The definition of mindfulness in the Pali language, where that preserves the teachings by the Buddha of mindfulness itself, is sati. Sati is the Pali term. And what it means literally is memory. It means remembering. And so in a way, remembering, it's not just a formal practice. I mean, what does memory have to do with meditation, right? But it's a quality. It's a state in terms of how we relate to ourselves, to our thoughts, to the world around us, to life itself. So it's a relational state that seeks for us to be free from the habit patterns that usually control, all of our experiences, that are conditioned into us, that have to do with our nature and so on. And so mindfulness is, I would say, it's a state of awareness in which we are able to maintain clarity, discernment, non-judgment, and acceptance of things as they are in the present moment, and to do it intentionally. So that's more of a John Kabat-Zinn kind of description of mindfulness, which makes sense to me. It's not different from the Buddhist definition of mindfulness. The difference is that this state that I'm talking about in Buddhism comes with an entire ecosystem. When I say ecosystem, I'm talking about there's ways that we practice it in the context of a path. It's not just a practice, but it's also a way of living.
Right.
And so ideally, it permeates, that awareness permeates whatever we're doing, working, washing dishes, playing tennis, even sitting on the cushion. Now, mindfulness meditation is a more formalized process of intentionally cultivating awareness through a method as taught by the Buddha.
Yes.
And at least when we talk about Buddhist mindfulness, we're talking about the teaching, the 10th discourse of the Buddha, who taught, okay, we begin practicing mindfulness through body awareness, through breath. There's a gross level to a very subtle level process in our meditation practice that focuses on our posture. There are 4 postures we can practice with. There's the seated posture, standing, lying down, and walking. Yeah. So this is part of the Satipatthana Sutra, the text teaching mindfulness. Yeah. We use our senses, our sensory experiences. When we use breath, breathing in, I can experience my body from within the body. Like I'm not dissociating from it, but I'm encountering my body as I breathe in. As I breathe out, I'm breathing out, experiencing my entire body. And I'm noticing, I'm paying attention, being mindful, quote unquote, of the changes in my body with the inhale and the exhale. So I'm learning as I breathe. Yeah. I'm hopefully gaining some insight that change is constant. Change is a part of moment to moment experience in a good way. Because all the stress that I carried onto the cushion, I actually have some agency in being able to soften and let go of all that contracting and just feel a deeper sense of well-being. And so that's just on the body. Then we move to the second foundation, which is our feeling states, what we call feeling tones, right? Am I feeling agitated? Am I feeling calm? Am I feeling peaceful, or am I feeling just distracted? Those kinds of things. And in the same way, we can train the mind simply to be fully stable, balanced, and attentive to our feeling tones. Yeah. And eventually these settle themselves. So we're not trying to control anything here. We're just allowing things to be as they are and just cultivating a good, easeful, attentive quality of awareness. And of course, the mind will drift and it'll just go off in all directions. And the cool thing about this is no matter how far your mind goes,
Yes.
no matter where it goes, it can never leave the spaciousness of your own presence, your own awareness, no matter how far it travels. And so we're remembering, quote unquote, right? Memory, remembering that whatever it is, I'm still aware of feeling tones. And the same is true for the third foundation, mindfulness of mind itself, thoughts, the nature of thoughts, thinking, concepts, narratives, and we see them too as impermanent. They come, they go, another one comes and goes, and we learn, wow, my thoughts are, they're not as real as I think or as I perceive them to be, because there's something here, a deeper experience of bearing witness, of observing naturally, gently, with kindness to whatever comes and goes. And so we start seeing then the nature of our thoughts as well as what is holding the thoughts, right? And so that becomes then the fourth foundation of mindfulness, which is insights. Insights, this is what we call vipassana or vipassana, which is insight meditation, then springs forth in this fourth one. We realize, oh, what is causing me to be agitated or to suffer? And what is there that is ultimately free of all of these things? This sense of simply bearing witness of awareness itself, what we can call natural awareness, that's really free of all of that content. So, and then we become aware of impermanence and also the hindrances, what's getting in the way. That formal process of intentionally cultivating mindfulness, that's what I would call the mindfulness meditation specifically, is having an awareness of how step by step to cultivate on the cushion that attentive, open awareness in the midst of those different categories of experience, what we call the foundations of mindfulness. And then meditation itself really can mean any number of techniques from a number of traditions. So meditation is kind of an overall term from the standpoint of South Asian religions. In the old sort of Christian writings, meditation can simply mean contemplating something, right? Meditations on something is a reflection or contemplation. But meditation in yoga, Buddhism, some of those traditions really is, it can be any kind of visualization practice. It can be a deity meditation. It could be mindfulness. It could be compassion meditation, more active. It could just simply be centering prayer, which in the Christian tradition is a form of mindfulness. Beautiful practice for in centering prayer by Thomas Keating and Thomas Merton, which is mindfulness only, invoking kind of a more Christian faith building practice by encountering the Holy Spirit as you are practicing mindfully breathing and so on. So I think meditation is just sort of an overall term for a contemplative practice of some kind. So when we talk about mindfulness, the state or the quality, and mindfulness meditation, which I think is more of the formal practice of how do we cultivate mindfulness intentionally. Meditation is a much larger, I think, field of practices and experiences. Yeah.
I love your the way you've explained the definitions of how you explain mindfulness and meditation, and that's one of our four pillars of a healthy lifestyle, and we really it's interesting because we kept that mindfulness and meditation separate because of that, because it's totally different. The mindfulness being like the more of like, and also that the four pillars should be every day you integrate these practices in your life, but mindfulness as a way of living, as a way of life, as a way of being, and then all the thousands of different meditations one could do depending on what your beliefs or your values, and your, whether it's contemplation or
and I think ideally mindfulness is a foundation for any form of meditation one does.
Yes.
Without mindfulness, I don't know how you practice another form of meditation and get
Yes.
the fruits of it. You
Yeah.
need to be mindful as you practice. I mean, any kind of contemplation practice that I've known,
Yeah.
that's the foundation for it on some level. However
Yeah.
you define mindfulness, it's an important quality because it implies relating to yourself and the object of your attention in a certain way.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And now this next question is future. I'm going to skip with the mindfulness, AI, and ethics. I think we sort of already, how does mindfulness intersect with technology and ethics in modern society? I think you sort of talked about this. And then this also goes into that, the future of AI and mindfulness. Where do you see the evolution of AI and mindfulness heading in educational settings and workplaces? And what innovations do you anticipate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the things that we talk about in our course is that how is mindfulness impactful? Why even have this conversation?
Yeah.
It has to do, I think we can begin that conversation by looking at things like social media and how that has taken over our attention span,
Mm.
how it has become short form for living, quote unquote, living the good life, and how we consume dopamine hits based on what we're doing when we're scrolling on Instagram or, um, caught up in just sound bites, and that's where we get our news from, and all of that. Things are going so quickly that there's no opportunity to really have clarity or have
Yeah.
any kind of discernment. And my concern with AI as it evolves into AGI and then
Yeah.
possibly into what we call super intelligence or ASI, artificial super intelligence, which is where
Yeah.
we're no longer in control of it and it is making decisions
Right. Right.
and basically dictating what will be happening
Yeah.
as if it has quote unquote a mind of its own, right? I
Yes.
think that because of the pace of that,
Mm.
we have to slow down.
Absolutely.
Humans have to start slowing down to avoid making catastrophic missteps.
Yeah.
And we know this, I think, um, from any field that where we're going too quickly with something.
Yes.
There's no time to really intentionally see what it is we're creating or what the risks are. And I think that some people in the scientific community and in technology say, well, that's not my job to determine that. That we'll deal with later on. We'll be able to deal with things like global warming by building a shield around the planet, right? We're creating our own need for adaptive solutions that might be too big for us to handle. And so I think we need to build into our development of these technologies some wisdom. We need, in a way, what AI is asking of humanity is we need to get smarter. We need to not farm out our intelligence to something that isn't based in human reasoning or human insight or human
Right.
wisdom, if you will.
Mm.
But rather, we're needing to get smarter in order to know how to curate this future that's relying on something that will have potentially its own risks coming. So we always want to do prevention. This is why
Yes.
the
Complete.
things that you talk about,
Yeah.
these four pillars, or having a really good diet and living a really wholesome life before we're sick, right?
Yes.
Healing happens because we're able to attend to things before they get too bad or they
Yes.
become irreversible. It's the same thing with AI. And
Yes.
yet, because of our systems, our economics, investors want to make return on investment, I mean, and it's all happening very quickly. Um, this is why mindfulness, both personally and
Mm.
also the ethical aspects of mindfulness, really need to be implemented at this point so that we have clarity, discernment, and wisdom about what we're creating. because whatever we build ultimately will be accessible to everyone, right? One of my great mantras is, if you build it, they will come, from that film Field of Dreams. Whatever technologies we're building one day will be available to whomever wishes us ill, to places that may not have our best interests at heart, and as well as the intelligence itself, right? Working no longer on behalf of humanity, but working on behalf of what it believes needs to happen. And so some of the catastrophic thoughts people posit sometimes are things like, they might even see humans as so flawed and imperfect that we become the problem. And this is the stuff of science fiction films, and all of that. But it's not so far-fetched when you consider kind of what AGI is leading into, which is called the singularity, meaning that it becomes so intelligent that we no longer have control over it, and we can't dial it back. So now it's out of our hands, right? That's what we call sort of the singularity, the AI singularity. And so keeping that alignment within the interests of humanity and human flourishing is critical. But we also have to be mindful of our tendencies, our habits, our greediness to just put things out there because we'll get a big sort of financial return on it. That can't be the marker. I know it's what makes things happen. But mindfulness says, let's have some clarity here. Let's build things that really are wholesome enough that we really are investing in our own human flourishing, as opposed to just kicking the can down the road and saying, well, we'll deal with all that later. And we do that as humans, as collective communities, until the complexity shuts down our motivation to solve anything. So it's, I think what mindfulness brings to that is really cultivating insight, slowing down, seeing where we are now, and implementing ethical frameworks so that our trajectory is in the right place. There's an ecosystem in which mindfulness happens, as I mentioned earlier, and that comes with certain ethical principles. And these aren't necessarily, you don't have to be a Buddhist to do this. These are human principles. And anyway, I think what we're talking about is how we are relating to ourselves, our personal aspirations, how we relate to the tendencies we may have, our biases. That's another thing, is biases and algorithms. The great Joy Buolamwini, who wrote a text we're using, as an African-American woman and an engineer working on AI programs, started to see that there are these inequities just baked into AI. So part of it also is awareness. We need to be aware of who is the one that gets to determine how these algorithms think. If they don't represent enough of humanity, we're just going to be baking in all of these biases and everything. And so I think what mindfulness does is it also has us look at the question, how then do we want to live going forward? What kind of life do we want to cultivate?
And ethics and mindfulness, how can mindfulness influence ethical decision making?
Exactly.
In organizations, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
What is your daily mindfulness practice?
Yeah. Wow. That's a good question. So I have a lot of mindfulness bells. Currently, it is red lights when I'm driving. This is something that the great Thich Nhat Hanh the late Thich Nhat Hanh, Thai, who's brilliant author, teacher, social engaged monk from Vietnam, poet, once asked, "What is your mindfulness bell?" And basically, you pick things that remind you. Yes, take a moment and take a breath and be fully present. Just open awareness to just this present moment through all your senses. Stop the spin for just a moment if you can. Recognize remembering. Sati, memory. And so I don't like red lights. I'm from California. I'm from California, where a yellow light lasts much longer than they do here in Boston. Here, they're 3 seconds, and you have to slam on your brakes. I always think I have more time. Anyway, that reactive habit I have to red lights has become my mindfulness bell. When I see the light red, I use it as a moment. Yeah. So I have a few things like that I do. And I used to have a friend. I mean, he's still a very good friend of mine. We used to send each other blank texts throughout the day. And the phone would go, it would have that ding sound. Yes. And there'd be no words on there, but it was kind of us sending the other a reminder throughout the day. Mindful.
Oh, okay.
So having a buddy like that was just, we haven't done that in a while, but it was really cool. And you also go, someone's thinking about me, and they're sending me a reminder to be mindful. And then maybe 2 hours later, I would send him one, And so you can be playful with it. That's the thing. It doesn't have to be this really serious, kind of, am I doing this right?
Yes.
Be playful with mindfulness. Make it something that is the last thing that requires effort in your life.
Yes.
Because a lot of people are turned off about mindfulness because it's one more thing I have to try to do. So if you make it effortless and be creative with it,
yes,
and make it humorous even. It may not be the formal practice of seated meditation, but to be mindful is simply to remember, to bear in mind, yes, I need to be present and focused on where I am and not where I'm going or where I'm coming from, but really fully here. It makes a difference. So anyway, I have a few of those mindfulness bells. I also find it really important at night to be quiet. If I can't sit on my cushion, usually I practice when I'm in bed, and I practice. It's kind of like a what do you call that? Yoga nidra, but it's a Tibetan Buddhist form of falling asleep while being wakeful.
Yes.
And when I say wakeful, I don't mean stimulated.
Yes.
Deeply relaxed and aware.
Yes.
Peaceful.
And mindful, like when you're going into your sleep and going into your, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Or I'll do a body scan. I'll go through lying down and do what I call spinal breathing. So I have a lot of different practices to draw on, depending on where I am. I also do regular retreats at home. This is invaluable for me. I have 4 or 5 days a month where I just go into solitary retreat. I have a meditation room at home. And I'll fast. I'll do liquids usually. And then I'll practice during that time. And it's just a whole reset on every system, every bodily system, every mental, emotional, psychological system is just reset. I really rely on those, to kind of keep me fairly steady.
Yes.
And
does that recharge you? Like almost like when you're putting your phone to charge, does that make you just like that reset, like your charge?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I also think it's important. This is some advice maybe for others too, who would like to have a mindfulness practice, is to create a space in your home where you do nothing else but meditate.
Yes.
So you have a constant invitation for you without pressure, right? Without the shoulds, without shoulding on ourselves.
Oh, yes.
And so, and just a welcoming place where you do nothing but sit and practice. Because what I do is, if there's a day where I'm just too busy to engage in practice, as cheesy as this sounds, it's really helpful. I'll go and I'll bow to my cushion, and that's enough. But it's a recognition that I honor this. Maybe I can't get to you today, but tomorrow I will, or maybe later tonight. But I think even that does something, because 50% of our mindfulness meditation practice is sitting down to do it. Once you're there, then you've already you've gotten past sort of the 50% of resistance that comes from having a regular practice.
Right. Yeah.
And without the judgment that comes with, oh, I really should do this, and when I do it, I should do it well, and all of that. But just allow it to be a place that is fully where you can really be as you are. It doesn't matter what you're feeling, what you're bringing onto the cushion, because you're also bringing on your caring, your love for yourself, your self-compassion, your loving kindness for yourself, genuine loving intent for yourself, because that too is there. It's not all just what's difficult, but it's also that quieter, subtler form of caring, and just sitting with that. Yeah. And focusing on your breath.
Right. That's what how we define self-care. That's exactly how we define self-care.
Good. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Creating that space for yourself where delete those shoulds,
Exactly.
Yeah. Coping with loneliness, building a community in mindfulness. How can mindfulness help individuals understand and cope with loneliness? What mindfulness practices do you recommend for cultivating connection and building a community? Loneliness now, as you might know, is a epidemic right now, and it's affecting so many people. And I just believe that mindfulness can be so helpful.
Yeah. Great question. It is. I think there was a study done not long ago that equated loneliness as being akin to smoking like a pack of cigarettes a day or something.
Oh, yes.
That it's actually toxic. And for any listeners that experience loneliness, this isn't meant to scare anybody.
No.
Because I think we all feel it at some point or another.
Yes.
I experience joy in solitude, but that's very different from feeling lonely. Loneliness itself can come from any number of things. It could be that we may have some kind of social anxiety where we're just not prone to going out and seeking out communities, or having the energy to sort of make something happen with friends or what have you. And of course, depression can cause that as well. It's an epidemic as well, that you just don't have energy. You don't have the energy or the will or the motivation to be external. So I think, first of all, you can cultivate loving kindness for yourself in that state. You can cultivate self-compassion for the suffering you encounter within yourself. You have that as this goodness at the center of your basic nature, this sense of goodness, of caring, of really genuine loving intention, even though it can feel subtle in the midst of the fog of depression or loneliness. Sometimes that can feel like it's more the reality than this fragrance of loving care that you have. And so it's not an either or. You can sort of like sometimes I'll meditate on the heart as being like a flower opening in the morning sun, and its most delicate center is where the fragrance is the sweetest. And so it takes just dropping deeply into that still place where your love is just freely given. It is sweet, it is gentle, with the pain that one is experiencing, and that can be radiated out to all parts of you, all part of your body, your emotions, and then beyond, and even to the point where you send that quality out to others in your life and so on. It's amazing what that does, not just for your emotional well-being, but also for your physiological well-being. It's healthy to be compassionate and loving. Actually, there's a study that has shown that compassion and loving kindness meditation reduce inflammation in the body, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
It impacts the hippocampus in the brain, which is made smaller by stress. We actually can grow that back through cultivating loving kindness meditation. So it really does have a physiological effect if you can give it a chance and just reach down and let it just be open. Even if tears are falling, that's okay. There's no judgment. And this is what we're working against, is the self-judgment that sometimes comes with loneliness. So I think mindfulness is really helpful to just get out of those narratives of judgment we have about ourselves and open up to that, just that natural quality to be caring to ourselves and loving. I think that's where it begins. I also think that it's a good idea for people. What I tell people sometimes is, look, if you're in a place where there are no mindfulness communities, there's no groups, get together with a couple of friends, pick a book, like a Thich Nhat Hanh book, like Breathe, You Are Alive, or, No Mud, No Lotus, which I use in my classes, and read them and talk about them together.
Yes.
Find something authentic and meaningful that helps you talk about mindfulness and talk about the challenges around mindfulness. So I think, reaching out to others who also have that interest and just asking, hey, Jane or Joe or whomever, would you like to read a book about mindfulness and talk about it? Because I've been curious about it and see how it might help change just how I'm feeling about my life. And if they're on board, you only need you and another person, much less 2, 3, 4 other people, to have a group where you get together. You don't need to have a teacher standing right there or sitting right there to instruct you, but just start sharing your insights. So, I mean, that's another thing that I think can be helpful, especially for people who are in, more rural areas or places that don't have meditation centers and so on. And I think too, if you are in a place where there is a mindfulness center, it's okay to go and not talk to anybody. Just to go to an open sitting, sit in the back, try it out, take your time. My experience has been people don't usually jump on you and go, hey, what's your name? And it's okay to not do that. Yeah. You're not immediately part of a community if you don't want to be. So just see what you get out of it. If it doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. Go try a different place, because not everything resonates with everybody. Find a teacher or an online community where you can keep your camera off. And, some of the people on our Sunday nights, if they're not up to it, they won't turn on their camera. It's fine. And we practice online on Zoom every Sunday evening.
Yes, share please with our listeners, with our audience, whoever's watching or listening, please. Chris, post a Sunday evening YouTube meditation. Share with us, Chris.
Yeah, so it's on Zoom. We meet Sunday nights, 7 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We have people from all over the country, from California, from Canada, from Florida, from the Southwest, from Arizona, from New Mexico, as well as New England people who Zoom in. And it's just basically there's a guided meditation, there's a talk around a particular teaching. It's very much rooted in certainly mindfulness, but also some of the Buddhist teachings that help support this ecosystem I was mentioning earlier. And it's just open to anybody. It really is just open to whomever wants to join. Anybody's welcome. Yeah, and usually I'll send out the link that Sunday at some point. It's actually the same link every week, but it's more of a reminder to people, and also letting them know what theme we'll be doing that evening. So
beautiful. Post as well on your channel, and we'll share links to all of this as well. And It's just a wonderful tool for people to use on their journey towards generating more mindfulness in their daily lives, you know. How does mindfulness contribute to rest and healing? I love that you do your retreats, and that's definitely, I would say, a way to restore and recharge and like reset, like you said. But
Yeah, so much I think of our illnesses, not all, of course, but so many of them are due to chronic stress. And what mindfulness can help us do, especially the practice uh, of practicing with breath and body, the more formal meditation practice. Not just that, being mindful is healthier no matter what, but sometimes we need the support of cultivating on a daily basis so that what we call our vagal tone, there's this nerve throughout the body called the vagus nerve. This is not a gambling reference, by the way. The vagus nerve is also called the pneumogastric nerve system. It's the largest nerve system in the body.
yes.
And when we're stressed out, that system of nerves
Yes.
is aroused to the point where it can impact everything from our neurophysiology down to our digestive system, because it's pneumogastric. This
Right.
nerve actually impacts our bowels. It impacts our digestion, which is one of the reasons stress can cause digestive problems and IBS and other things.
Yes.
So whatever lowers the vagal tone, what we call the
Yes.
vagal tone, to settle, to relax, actually helps the body. It gives it an opportunity to regenerate itself. So much of our stress keeps what we call the sympathetic nervous system in a state of constant arousal, right? So it's almost like there's constant fight, flight, or freeze response. And what we want to do is have the parasympathetic nervous system that kind of balances that out, puts the brakes on the corticosteroids in the blood and the adrenaline to bring it down, so that we're putting the brakes on that kind of stress response and really able to settle so that the stress comes back down. And this is what we call allostasis. Allostasis is the process of returning back to a homeostasis, to a state of resting. And so mindfulness meditation really helps that process, because we know that breathing is key in settling the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. It's key for focusing the mind. We can immediately feel it softening our muscles. There's a change in the body that happens when we're breathing deeply and intentionally and gently, and then holding it just for a moment, and then breathing out and just paying attention to the entire out breath, the entire length of the exhale, gently all the way to the end. And then we breathe in again. By doing that, it's like we're giving our entire physiology a massage, our inner physiology. We know that relaxation is really important for healing things, not just from stress, but for giving the body an opportunity to bring its resources into repair. The other thing is that if you've ever taken a yoga class, there's a good reason why corpse pose or shavasana is at the end.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you know why is it at the end, but the relaxation state that we get actually serves to imprint our asana practice more deeply into the muscle structure of the body. So if you've ever been in a yoga class and people have been doing their asana and so on, and then right before shavasana, they get up and they leave the room, that I've seen this many times, they're actually shortchanging themselves of the imprinting of that asana they did deeper into the body through a resting state, through a relaxation. We know that this is how we imprint the body, is through relaxation. So there are a lot of benefits to being relaxed, to settling into a calm state. Both, the nervous system, our immune system, the inflammation in the body goes down when we practice meditation, especially compassion meditation, which is very interesting. our circulatory system.
Yes.
So we're impacted by these skills, whether we're Buddhist or not. Just practicing regularly, we're giving ourselves that time out to sort of repair, what's being done to our bodies by living a busy life.
Yes. In Bikram yoga, if some of the postures are too much for someone who's starting, they just suggest just go into savasana. I love savasana. It's one of the best.
Exactly.
You just feel all that healing on that cellular level.
Yeah.
So,
and the other thing too is visualization meditations, which I'm a huge fan of. And, one of the things we cover in a couple of our classes has to do with what's called the HPA axis in the body, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, where they are all in communication with each other. And here's what's interesting about doing, let's say, a garden meditation or a water meditation. Any kind of visualization, if you can let go of the discursive mind, this is the cognitive, or the mind of narrative and language and belief and all of that, and let the visual brain in the back just sort of receive that practice that someone's guiding you through, and bypassing that discursive mind, your hypothalamus will pick up the visualization as a real experience, right?
Yes.
If you get in the way with like, this isn't real or this won't work, then it kind of short circuits the process. But if you're able to give yourself over to a visualization, your hypothalamus will take all of that information, that sensory data, and convey to the pituitary gland that this is a good thing. And we don't need all of those hormones to be, those stress hormones to happen. Or it may be that it produces oxytocin if we're doing like a compassion meditation, right? Which is very good for us. And then the adrenals will settle, right? So there is this, and I call that the visualization chain. I'm actually writing about this these days. I'm writing a manuscript for a couple of books, but that's one of the things that I talk about as well, is why your belief doesn't matter whether you believe this will help or not. Give yourself over to it, because it will have enormous healing benefits in your body by doing certain visualization practices. I used to be a chaplain. I worked at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute for 5 years full time. And I taught meditation and mindfulness and did a lot of visualization with cancer patients and also people at the end of life. And so it was incredible how important that was for well-being for people, but who could really like visualize. Not everybody can visualize very easily. I know people who can't, they just can't visualize at all. But for people who can and are willing to let go of the logical, rational mind and give themselves to a visualization, the benefits can really be quite striking. Yeah.
Did it help with the healing process, like on the one hand, and then for those who just were, it was their time, did it help them sort of go through that transition in a sort of with more grace in a way?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Chris, our philosophy is that true self-care relies on utilizing all 4 pillars of a healthy lifestyle: exercise, nutrition, rest, healing, and mindfulness meditation. And this is our formula for health, happiness, and longevity. And when these 4 pillars are in alignment, we can achieve harmony and equilibrium. What is your daily wellness and self-care routine?
Getting enough sleep. And it's true, there are certain times of the night where certain organs like the liver and the kidneys and everything regenerate. I'm trying to do better. I'm a night owl. I'm a chronic night owl. I do a lot of creativity, a lot of stuff at night. And so, but I think, really being intentional about my sleep patterns is really important. Diet is big. Eating really wholesome food that to be good for your body, paying attention to how you feel. I was telling Tita earlier, How I just started eating fish a few years ago as I've gotten older, and it has made such a difference. Immediately, I feel the difference. My body's getting something from it that possibly it's not getting from other sources. So I think paying attention to energy, to stress, certainly, and music. Music is my self-care. I think creativity, whatever you need to do something fun and creative, is so good for your spirit, and that will be good for your body. So like playing music with friends, writing songs, recording, I also have a band that I play with. And I mean, creativity, finding time for that is really helpful, I think. But finding a voice, the voice of expression, I also think that it really matters that we find meaning and purpose in our lives. That I think is one of the most important aspects of potentially of longevity. I think people who have really things they're passionate about, doing a life that is meaningful and purposeful, is remarkably helpful for our well-being and also for our physical health. As long as we control our gifts and they don't control us by burning ourselves out because we love it so much. And that's an edge that we work when we really love what we do. But I think having meaning and purpose, never stopping searching for what it is that makes your heart sing and what really makes you feel alive. Really, that's so important too.
Krish, you're such an inspiration to us. And it has been such a profound honor to welcome you today to Tita Talks. And I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom, compassion, and kindness and knowledge. Chris, who or what inspires you?
Well, my teachers. My teachers have inspired me and continue to inspire me. The ones that I've learned from, especially spiritual teachers, but teachers come in many forms. My mentors here at Harvard, I have a mentor who taught me how to teach when I was hired to start teaching at Harvard. She's an amazing person. She has since retired, but we're very close. And my father, my dad, who was kind of, as I mentioned earlier, a remarkable, complicated person, but he passed away in 2017. And I've just been reflecting since then on all the blessings I've gotten from him and all the strengths that I possess that I think that he gave me. So that's the first place I go, is my benefactors, the people who have taught me those things. And also my students, man, my students inspire me constantly. I love the learning process that we share. It's not just me imparting things, right? But we discover things together. They already have a lot of wisdom and life experience. And so I'm inspired by them. And then the last thing are people who have been through profound adversity in life and continue to be compassionate, loving beings and helpful to humanity. That kind of resilience and generativity, giving back in the aftermath of having gone through something challenging, I think is it's awe-inspiring, and it's also it gives me a lot of hope as well for what's possible. And that includes people who've been through cancer, the patients that I got to know, some of whom survived and are living or flourishing, and some of whom didn't. People like Nelson Mandela, the people who are change makers that went through incredible odds, who still kept that sense of love for humanity. I think about what you're doing and the loss that you've had with your mother, tragically, and now how you're giving back, your healing journey. I am so inspired by that. And it really speaks to the human spirit, what our potential really is when we don't lose the heart of who we are, the good heart of who we are.
Science-based evidence shows that the more self-care tools and techniques you have, and the more positive daily habits you embrace, then the more you not only learn about yourself and what works best for you in your life, but the better life you will live. It's about empowering yourself with the skills to live a happier and healthier, more harmonious life. I want to read an excerpt from my book, Sonia's Ring, 11 Ways to Heal Your Heart. Physical and spiritual well-being is necessary for life and growth. It is what helps to keep us alive, maintains and nourishes love, faith, hope, perseverance, compassion, and kindness. All of this is available for you, so reach out and grab what is yours. Chris, what is the key message you wish to convey to our global audience today?
Slowing down.
Mm.
Finding a natural pace at some point in your life during your day in this really fast, ever increasing, fast-paced world. I think that is one of the things. I think also, as I mentioned, prizing creativity and expression, really expressing, whether it's through painting or writing or whatever it might be, something creative. I think also we need to teach our children some things for the future. I think number one, critical thinking is really important. Yeah, so we don't just rely on sound bites and quick kind of snapshots of algorithms that we're getting, through social media and such. So critical thinking, problem solving for our children, learning how to solve problems, complex problems, is so important. The third would be really having purpose and meaning in being a human being, as opposed to forsaking our humanity, which is not something we can do, even if we think we can. But seeing value in that. And then last is mindfulness for our kids, to find clarity, balance, emotional balance, self-regulation, and also wisdom and insight. I want our kids to really have that immunization that they need through mindfulness and through meditation, so that our future is continuing to be cultivated with clarity and with insight. I think that, the terrain of mindfulness has an ecosystem. There are ethics there. There's a whole way of being on a path. So I think seeing that I don't just have a mindfulness practice, but I have a path. I'm on a path that can hold what I can't. If I can't hold it, my path can hold it. See your life as a path, not just, as a means to an end or as having a practice, but that there really is purpose in that path.
Yes, it's the journey, right?
The journey, yeah.
Your insights have been invaluable to our audience. Thank you for illuminating how mindfulness practice can coexist with, and I would say even enhance, advancements in AI. And imagine if the mindfulness practice, more and more young people could start understanding and practicing mindfulness and really understanding this would, I like to say, the daily self-care habits. Wow, that would be give us tremendous hope for a very bright future.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you. I was going to say thank you so much again, Chris, for being on Tita Talks. And thank you for joining us today. For more information, please visit www.wellnessworldusa.com, www.titatalks.com, and follow us on Instagram at wellnessworldusa, at Tita Talks Official, at We Love Tita Talks, and at Sonia Tita Puopolo. And to learn more about Chris Berlin, visit www.clearpathmeditation.com, www.satigata.com, that's SATIGATA.com, and follow him on YouTube. He has at YouTube at Clear Path Meditation, and he again hosts a weekly meditation. And our next episode, we'll talk about the healing power of music. And I look forward to having you on so we can talk about your music and how music can heal, and we can continue this incredible conversation.
Oh, I can't wait already.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tita, and everyone. Be well.